November 1944. Camp Concordia, Kansas. A freezing Tuesday morning. A German prisoner named Hannah was running faster than she had ever run in her life. Her best friend Clara was dying on the laundry floor, blood soaking through her dress. Hannah reached the American guard post. She pounded on the door with both fists. When a soldier opened it, she begged him with tears streaming down her face. "Please, my friend is dying. Shoot her. End her pain. Please." She expected him to pull out his pistol. That was what enemies did. That was what the Reich had promised. But the soldier did not reach for his gun. He reached for his radio. What happened next would take 8 hours. 8 hours that would shatter everything Hannah believed about Americans, about war, about humanity itself. What did the Americans do? Did they let Clara die? Did they waste precious medicine on an enemy? The answer will shock you. If you love powerful, true stories from history, hit that subscribe button right now and watch until the end. This story will change how you think about war, enemies, and what it truly means to be human. August 1944. The summer heat pressed down on the transport train like a thick blanket. Hannah stood near the window of the cattle car, gripping the iron bars with sweaty hands. Her eyes moved across the American countryside rolling past. She blinked, then blinked again. What she saw made no sense. Houses stood untouched, painted white, with neat little fences around green lawns. Children ran through yards, laughing, chasing dogs. Farmers drove tractors through endless fields of golden corn. The sky was clear blue. The roads were smooth and full of cars. No bomb craters, no burned buildings, no piles of rubble where families once lived. Hannah had spent the last 2 years watching Germany turn to ash. She had seen Bremen, her hometown, disappear block by block under Allied bombs. She had walked past bodies in the streets. She had smelled the smoke of her own neighborhood burning. But here, across the ocean, America looked like the war did not exist at all. Beside her, Clara whispered through dry lips, "Look at it. Nothing is destroyed. Nothing. How can they live like this while our cities burn?" The two women had known each other since childhood. They had grown up on the same street in Bremen. They had joined the Wehrmacht auxiliaries together at 19, trained as radio operators together, and been captured together when their unit surrendered in France. Now, at 23, they were being shipped to a country that seemed to belong to a different world entirely. The cattle car held 40 women. All were German military auxiliaries. Most were in their early 20s. All wore the same look on their faces, fear mixed with stubborn pride. They had been told exactly what would happen to them in American hands. The Reich propaganda had been very clear. Americans were gangsters, criminals, savages with no honor and no discipline. They would starve the prisoners, work them to death, treat German women like animals. One officer had gathered them before the transport and spoken plainly. "Do not expect mercy. The Americans will use you until you break, then throw you away like garbage. That is who they are." Hannah had believed every word. Why would the Reich lie to its own soldiers? The train slowed with a long screech of brakes. Through the bars, Hannah could see their destination rising from the flat Kansas landscape. Guard towers, barbed wire fences, rows of wooden buildings painted dull green. Camp Concordia, one of more than 500 prisoner-of-war camps that America had built across the country. By war's end, these camps would hold over 400,000 German and Italian prisoners, a small army of enemies, fed and housed on American soil. But Hannah did not know those numbers yet. She only knew that the camp ahead looked wrong. It was too clean, too orderly. The buildings stood straight and solid. The grounds were neat. There were no guard dogs straining at chains, no sounds of screaming. The air coming through the old windows smelled different here. Dry and dusty, yes, but underneath that was something else. Something Hannah had almost forgotten. Meat, cooking meat, real meat. The smell drifted across the compound, rich and fatty, making her empty stomach clench with sudden, painful hunger. She had not eaten real meat in almost 2 years. In Germany, everything went to the soldiers at the front. Civilians survived on watery soup and bread made from sawdust. "Do you smell that?" Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It must be for the guards," Hannah said quickly. "Not for us." But even as she spoke, doubt crept into her chest. Something was not adding up. The clean camp, the solid buildings, the smell of food. None of it matched what she had been promised. The train doors opened with a metal clang. American soldiers shouted orders. "Out! Line up! Move!" Hannah grabbed Clara's hand as they climbed down into the blazing August sun. Whatever waited for them inside those gates, they would face it together. She could not know it then, but the next few hours would begin to crack open everything she believed about her enemies. They marched through the camp gates in lines of 4. Hannah kept her eyes forward, her spine straight. She had been trained not to show weakness, but her hands shook. As they walked closer to the main buildings, that smell grew stronger. Cooking meat, fresh bread, the kind of bread with a crust that cracked when you broke it. Hannah's mouth watered so hard she had to swallow. She felt ashamed of her hunger. An American officer approached their group. She was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair pinned neatly under her cap. She looked at the German women without hatred, almost with kindness. She spoke in careful German. "Welcome to Camp Concordia. You will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. You will receive food, shelter, and medical care. You will be allowed to write letters home. Any questions?" Silence. No one spoke. Several women were trembling. One started crying quietly. Clara leaned close to Hannah's ear. "It is a trick. It must be." "Maybe," Hannah whispered back. But that bread smell was real. The organized camp was real. Where was the cruelty they had been promised? Before entering the main camp, they had to go through processing. The building ahead had a red cross painted on the side, a medical facility. Hannah's chest tightened. Medical experiments. That was what happened to prisoners, right? She had heard whispers. "I do not want to go in there," a young woman behind them said, her voice rising with panic. The American officer turned. "It is just a medical check and shower, standard procedure for all new arrivals." Inside, the medical building was impossibly clean. White walls, proper equipment. American nurses in crisp uniforms moved between stations with calm efficiency. One by one, the women were examined. Hannah watched nervously as those ahead of her were checked for injuries, for lice, for disease. The nurses were professional. Distant, yes, but not cruel. When Hannah's turn came, a nurse pointed to a chair. "Sit." The examination was quick. The nurse checked her hair, looked in her mouth, examined her hands and feet for wounds. "Any pain? Any illness?" Hannah shook her head. "Good." Through that door for shower. The shower room had white tiles and steam rising in the air. Hannah's hands began shaking harder. This was it. This was where the truth would show itself. But instead of guards with weapons, there was only a middle-aged American woman in work clothes. She handed Hannah a bar of soap. Real soap. White and smooth. When Hannah lifted it to her nose, it smelled like flowers. Lavender, maybe. "Shower is hot," the woman said in broken German. "Take your time. Clean clothes on bench when you finish." Hannah stood frozen, holding the soap. Hot water. Real soap. Clean clothes, not humiliation, not cruelty, just basic human dignity. When she stepped under the shower, the hot water hit her skin and something broke inside her. Tears came before she could stop them. For months she had washed in cold water when she could wash at all. She had been covered in dirt, her hair matted with grime. The hot water ran down her back, washing away layers of filth. The soap made thick white lather in her hands. She scrubbed her hair, her skin, scrubbed until the water at her feet ran clear. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt clean. Clean clothes waited on the bench. Simple work dresses, plain but whole. No holes, no tears. They even smelled like laundry soap. Clara emerged from another shower stall, her eyes red. The two women looked at each other without speaking. What was there to say? After processing, they were led to the mess hall. The building was long with windows letting in afternoon light. Inside, rows of tables stood ready. The smell that had been teasing Hannah since she arrived now hit her full strength. They lined up. American cooks served food onto metal trays. Hannah took hers with trembling hands and looked down. Mashed potatoes with real butter melting on top, a thick slice of meatloaf, green beans, white bread with more butter, and in a small cup, something dark and steaming. Coffee, Clara breathed beside her. Real coffee. They sat at a table with other women from their transport. For a long moment, no one touched their food. They just stared. It could be poisoned, someone whispered. Then why give us showers first? Another woman responded. Why waste the soap? Hannah picked up her fork. Her hand shook as she scooped up mashed potato and brought it to her mouth. The taste exploded on her tongue. Creamy, rich, buttery, real potatoes, not the watery turnip mash or sawdust bread they had survived on for 2 years in Germany. She started crying again. She could not help it. Around the table, other women began eating. Some cried. Some laughed with a sound close to hysteria. One woman ate so fast she choked and had to be patted on the back. The meatloaf was real beef, ground and seasoned and baked. Hannah had not eaten beef in 3 years. The bread was soft and white, dissolving in her mouth. And the coffee, bitter, strong, and real. Not the roasted acorns they had called coffee back home. Hannah noticed American soldiers eating at tables near the back of the hall. They had the same food, the same portions. The prisoners were not being given scraps. They were eating the same meal as their captors. By 1944, the United States was feeding over 150,000 German prisoners of war held in camps across the country. Each prisoner received the same daily ration as American soldiers, 2,800 calories. Meanwhile, in Germany, civilian rations had dropped to less than 1,500 calories per day. They feed us like they feed themselves, Clara said quietly. The thought made Hannah's head spin. What kind of enemy did that? What kind of country? After the meal, they were shown to their barracks. Inside were rows of bunk beds. Each had a real mattress, a pillow, and 2 folded wool blankets. Hannah pressed her hand against the mattress. It was thin, yes, but real. Not straw on wooden planks. Not the cold floor she had slept on during the retreat through France. She unfolded one of the blankets. Thick wool. Clean. It even smelled fresh. A stove sat in the center of the barracks. An American guard had shown them how to use it before leaving. Gets cold here in winter, he had said in simple German. You will need heat. Heat. In winter. For prisoners. That night, lying in her bunk with a full stomach for the first time in months, wrapped in a clean wool blanket, Hannah could not sleep. Everything they had told her about the Americans was wrong. And if that was a lie, what else had the Reich lied about? Wake-up call came at 6 in the morning, not with screamed orders or violence, but with a simple bell. The women dressed and lined up for morning roll call. Names were called. Attendance was taken. The process was efficient, but not harsh. No one was struck. No one was threatened. Breakfast was served at 7. Every morning the same impossible abundance. Oatmeal with brown sugar, toast with jam, eggs, coffee, always coffee, real coffee. After breakfast came work assignments. Hannah and Clara were assigned to the camp laundry facility. The work was hard, yes. Their hands grew red and raw from washing uniforms for American soldiers. They scrubbed, rinsed, hung clothes to dry, folded them neatly. But here was the thing that made Hannah's brain struggle to understand. They were paid in American money, 80 cents per day. Why would they pay us? Hannah asked Clara one morning as they scrubbed stains from an officer's shirt. We are prisoners. They could force us to work for nothing. An older woman working nearby answered. She had been a school teacher in Hamburg before the war. Geneva Convention. It requires fair treatment of prisoners, including payment for work. And they actually follow it? Hannah asked. The teacher gave her a tired smile. Apparently, with their earnings, the women could buy things at the camp canteen. Small things. Luxuries they had not seen in years. Chocolate bars, cigarettes, extra soap. writing paper. The first time Hannah held enough coins to buy a Hershey bar, she stood outside the canteen for 5 full minutes, just staring at it. The brown wrapper, the name in English letters, chocolate, real chocolate. She had not tasted chocolate in 4 years. In Germany, all chocolate went to the military. Civilians got nothing. When she bit into it, the sweetness almost hurt. It melted on her tongue, rich and creamy. Her knees went weak. She had to sit down on a bench. Clara found her there, tears running down her face, half a chocolate bar in her hand. "I know," Clara said quietly. She held up her own Hershey bar. "I know." The days fell into routine. Breakfast at 7, work until noon, lunch, more work until 6, dinner, then free time. Lunch was always substantial, soup and sandwiches, meat and vegetables. Dinner brought more of the same. Sometimes there was even dessert, apple pie, cookies, cake made with real sugar and real butter. After dinner, the women could write letters home, though American censors read them first. They could borrow books from the camp library. They could just sit and talk. On Sundays, there was no work. They could attend religious services if they wanted, Catholic or Protestant. The camp provided both. The routine became almost normal. That was what frightened Hannah most, how quickly she was forgetting what real captivity should feel like. 3 weeks after arriving at Camp Concordia, Hannah received her first letter from home. The envelope was thin, the paper inside thinner. Her mother's handwriting shook across the page, probably from cold or hunger, or both. Hannah sat on her bunk and read with trembling hand. Bremen was destroyed, her mother wrote. Their house had been hit in a bombing raid. Gone. Nothing left but rubble. She was living in a basement shelter with 6 other families. 15 people in a space meant for one family. There was almost no food except what ration cards allowed, and the rations had been cut again. A slice of bread per day, watery soup, sometimes potatoes if they were lucky. No heat, no electricity. Water came from a communal pump 2 blocks away, and they had to carry it in buckets. The letter ended simply, "I am glad you are safe, my darling. Wherever you are, it must be better than here. All my love, Mutti." Hannah folded the letter carefully. Her hands would not stop shaking. Her mother was living in a basement, starving, freezing, and Hannah was here in America eating 3 meals a day, sleeping in a bed with blankets. She had bought chocolate yesterday. The guilt hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, pressing the letter against her chest, trying not to scream. Clara found her an hour later, curled on her bunk, eyes red and swollen. "Letter from home?" Hannah nodded. "Mine too," Clara said quietly. "My brother is missing, probably dead somewhere in Russia. My little sister has tuberculosis, but there is no medicine left in the city." They sat together in silence. Around them, other women read their own letters, crying their own tears. The guilt was collective, suffocating. By late 1944, civilian rations in German cities had been cut to 1,100 calories per day. Children were dying of malnutrition. The elderly froze in their beds. Meanwhile, German prisoners in American camps received 2,800 calories daily. Hot showers, medical care, heated barracks. That evening at dinner, Hannah could barely eat. The food tasted like ash in her mouth. How could she swallow this beef when her mother was starving? But she ate anyway, because her body needed it, because refusing would change nothing. The routine continued. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. Hannah started to notice things about the American guards. They were so casual, so relaxed. They chewed gum while on duty. They made jokes with each other. They listened to jazz music on small radios. One guard, a young man named Tommy, who sometimes worked near the laundry building, tried to teach them English phrases. "Hello, thank you, please, you're welcome." He was friendly. Not in a threatening way, just friendly, like they were people, not enemies. After 6 weeks, Hannah noticed something else. Her body was changing. She looked down at her arms one morning. They had filled out. Not fat, but healthy. The sharp angles of starvation had softened. When she caught her reflection in a window, she barely recognized herself. Colour had returned to her cheeks. Her hair, washed regularly now, had regained its shine. She looked healthy. The enemy had made her healthy while her own country let her starve. That thought haunted her more than any nightmare. October came, bringing cooler weather to Kansas. The women were issued warmer clothes, sweaters, jackets, proper shoes with thick soles. No one had asked for them. The Americans simply provided them. One morning, while Hannah hung wet laundry on the drying lines, an American soldier approached. He was older, maybe 40, with grey hair at his temples. His name tag read Sergeant Morrison. He held out a pack of cigarettes. Smoke? Hannah hesitated, then took one. She did not smoke often, but cigarettes had become a kind of currency in camp, a way to be social. Morrison lit it for her, then lit his own. They stood in silence for a moment, smoke curling into the cool morning air. Then Morrison spoke in careful German. "You have family in Germany?" "My mother," Hannah said, "in Bremen." Morrison nodded slowly. "I have a daughter about your age. She is a nurse in France right now." The moment stretched between them. This man's daughter was treating wounded American soldiers. Hannah's countrymen were trying to kill those soldiers, yet here they stood, sharing cigarettes like normal people. "This war is stupid," Morrison said suddenly. "All wars are stupid, but this one especially." Hannah stared at him. "In Germany, you did not criticize the war. You did not question. Questioning was dangerous. People disappeared for less. But Morrison had just done exactly that. An American soldier criticizing the war, and no one arrested him. He took another drag on his cigarette. "You are young. You should not be here. You should be home, living your life. There is no home to go back to," Hannah said quietly. "Bremen is destroyed." Morrison looked at her with something like pity. "Yeah, war does that." He stubbed out his cigarette and walked away, leaving Hannah standing there, with questions spinning in her head. Interactions like that became common as weeks passed. The American guards were not cruel. They were not even particularly strict. They did their jobs with tired professionalism, like men who would rather be anywhere else. Tommy, the young guard who taught them English, sometimes brought magazines. Life. Look, the Saturday Evening Post. The women gathered around them like children around a storybook. They stared at photographs of American life. The abundance shocked them. Page after page of advertisements, cars, refrigerators, washing machines, and food, so much food, photographs of families gathered around tables loaded with turkeys, hams, pies, vegetables. "Is this real?" Clara asked one evening, pointing at a Coca-Cola advertisement showing a smiling family at a picnic. "Do Americans really live like this?" The school teacher from Hamburg studied the magazine carefully. America was not touched by the war like Europe was. No bombs, no invasion. They are still whole. Whole! The word hung in the air. Germany was shattered into pieces. America was whole. One Sunday, a group of American civilians came to the camp. "Church ladies," someone said. They brought donations, blankets, books, knitted socks. An older woman with white hair approached Hannah. She pressed a pair of thick wool socks into her hands. "For winter," she said in broken German. "God bless you, dear." Hannah stood there holding the sock, tears running down her face. This woman, this enemy woman, had knitted socks for her, for a German prisoner, for an enemy. Why? That question was destroying everything Hannah thought she knew about the world. At night, after lights out, the women whispered in the darkness. They debated what it all meant. "This is psychological warfare," one woman insisted. "They are trying to break our spirits." "By feeding us?" another responded. "By keeping us warm? What kind of warfare is that?" "The most effective kind," the first woman shot back. "Because it is working. Look at us. We are forgetting who we are." "Or maybe," the school teacher said quietly, "we are remembering who we are supposed to be. Human beings, not soldiers, not tools, just people." The debates circled endlessly. No one had answers. Everyone had doubts. Hannah found herself watching the Americans more closely. How they moved through the world with such ease, how they joked and laughed, how black soldiers and white soldiers worked side by side. In Germany, there had been rigid hierarchies. Officers ate better than enlisted men. Party members had privileges others did not. Everything was about rank and race and who deserved what. But here, the system seemed different, looser, and it worked. The camp ran smoothly without the fear and brutality she had known. Maybe, Hannah thought, there was more than one way to organize a society, more than one way to be strong. The thought was dangerous, treasonous even, but it would not leave her alone. By late November, Hannah had been at Camp Concordia for 3 months. She had gained 12 pounds. Her hair was healthy. Her skin had color. She slept in a warm bed every night, and every morning she woke up feeling guilty for being alive and well, while Germany burned. But underneath the guilt was something else, something she was almost afraid to name. Relief. She was relieved to be here, relieved to be safe, relieved to be a prisoner. What kind of person felt relief at being captured by the enemy? It happened on a Tuesday morning in late November. Hannah and Clara were working in the laundry as usual. Steam rose from the washing basins. The air smelled of soap and wet fabric. Clara had complained of stomach pain the day before, but said it was nothing. Probably just ate something that disagreed with me. But that morning, Clara looked wrong. Her face was pale, almost grey. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the cold. "Are you all right?" Hannah asked. "I am fine," Clara said, but her voice was strained. "Just the pain is worse today." By mid-morning, Clara was leaning against the washing basin, gripping the edge with white knuckles. Her breathing came fast and shallow. "Clara, you need to see the doctor." "No," Clara shook her head. "It will pass. I just need to—" She never finished the sentence. Her eyes rolled back. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. Hannah caught her before she hit the concrete floor. She lowered Clara down as gently as she could, her heart hammering in her chest. "Help!" she screamed in German, then in broken English, "Help! Please!" Blood was seeping through Clara's dress, dark red, spreading across her abdomen. Hannah pressed her hand against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but she knew. She had seen this before during the chaotic retreat through France. Internal bleeding, probably a ruptured appendix. Without surgery, Clara would die. Slowly, painfully. And the Americans would never waste surgery on an enemy prisoner. Why would they? Better to end it quickly, better to shoot her than let her suffer for hours. That was mercy. Hannah looked down at her best friend's pale face. They had known each other since they were 7 years old. They had grown up together, learned to ride bicycles together, joined the war together. She could not let Clara die in agony. "Stay with her," Hannah shouted to the other women. Then she ran. She sprinted across the compound, her lungs burning. She reached the guard post and pounded on the door with both fists. A young American soldier opened it, surprise on his face. "Please," Hannah gasped in English. "My friend, dying. Please shoot her. Mercy, please." The soldier's eyes went wide. "Shoot her? What? No, wait!" He grabbed his radio and barked into it. "Medical emergency, laundry building, need ambulance now." Within seconds, alarms were sounding across the camp. Not battle alarms, medical alarms. "Show me where she is," the soldier said. "Quick." Hannah stared at him, not understanding. Then it hit her. They were not going to shoot Clara. They were going to try to save her. The ambulance arrived in less than 3 minutes. 2 medics jumped out with a stretcher. Hannah led them to the laundry building where Clara lay on the floor, barely conscious. The medics worked fast, checking pulse, blood pressure, examining the wound. "Possible ruptured appendix," one said in English. "We need to get her to surgery, now." Surgery! The word hit Hannah like a punch. They lifted Clara onto the stretcher, started an IV line right there, wrapped her in blankets. Hannah followed them to the ambulance. "Please," she said to one of the medics, "can I come? She is my friend. She will be scared alone." The medic looked at the guard, who shrugged. "Need permission from the captain?" The captain arrived moments later. He looked at Hannah, then at Clara on the stretcher. "She can go," he said. Then he pointed at a guard standing nearby. "Davis, you go with them." The ride to the hospital in the nearby town of Concordia was a blur. Hannah sat in the back of the ambulance, holding Clara's cold hand. Clara's eyes fluttered open briefly. "Hannah," she whispered, "I am here. You will be all right. The doctors will help you." "Will they?" Clara's voice was so faint. "Why would they?" "I do not know," Hannah admitted, "but they are trying." At the hospital, everything moved even faster. Clara was rushed through doors marked surgery. Nurses surrounded her, taking vitals, preparing her. A surgeon appeared. He was older, maybe 50, with grey hair and steady hands. He looked at Clara's chart, then at Clara herself. "Ruptured appendix with peritonitis," he said to the nurses. "Prep or type and cross for blood. Let's move." Hannah grabbed his arm. "Please," she said in German, then tried in English. "Please help her. She is a good person. Please." The surgeon looked at her with something like compassion. He answered in careful German, "We will do everything we can, I promise." They wheeled Clara away. Hannah tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped her. "You have to wait here. The surgery will take several hours." Several hours. They were going to operate for several hours on a German prisoner. Guard Davis pointed to the waiting room. "Come on, we sit." The waiting room had hard plastic chairs and old magazines. Hannah sat down, unable to think clearly. Davis offered her a cup of terrible hospital coffee. She took it. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. Other families came and went, Americans waiting for their loved ones. They glanced at Hannah's prison clothes with curiosity, but no one was cruel. One older woman even offered her a sandwich. "You look hungry, dear." 4 hours, 5, 6. The sun was setting when the surgeon finally emerged. His surgical gown was stained with blood. He looked exhausted. Hannah jumped to her feet. "Clara?" The surgeon pulled down his mask. "She is alive. The appendix had ruptured. There was significant infection. We had to clean out the abdominal cavity completely. It was touch and go for a while, but she pulled through." "She will live," Hannah whispered. "If there are no complications, yes, she will need to stay here at least a week, maybe 2. But yes, she should recover." Hannah's legs gave out. She sat down hard, tears streaming down her face. The surgeon sat beside her, still in his bloody gown. "Your friend is very lucky. Another hour and we would have lost her." "Thank you," Hannah managed through her tears. He patted her shoulder gently. "It is what we do. All lives have value. All lives have value." Those 5 words shattered everything Hannah had been taught. The surgeon had spent 8 hours saving Clara's life. 8 hours of delicate surgery, American medical supplies, American blood in the transfusion, American expertise, all for a German prisoner, an enemy, because all lives have value. The Reich had taught Hannah that some lives mattered more than others, that Germans were superior, that enemies were less than human, that resources should never be wasted on the weak. But this American surgeon had just proven that teaching wrong with his actions. Hannah was allowed to see Clara in the recovery room. Clara lay in a hospital bed, pale but breathing. IVs ran into both arms, bandages covered her abdomen, but her chest rose and fell steadily. She was alive. Hannah took her friend's hand and wept, not just from relief, but from the weight of understanding. Everything she had believed was a lie, and that was the most terrifying revelation of all. Clara spent 12 days in the hospital. Hannah was allowed to visit every day, always with Guard Davis escorting her. The hospital staff treated Clara like any other patient. The nurses checked on her regularly. They changed her bandages, brought her meals, gave her pain medicine when she needed it. One nurse, a young woman named Betty, was especially kind. She brought Clara extra pillows, helped her sit up to eat, chatted with her in broken German about simple things: the weather, Betty's cat, a movie she had seen, normal conversation, human conversation, as if they were not enemies at all. On the 4th day, Clara was awake enough to really talk. Hannah sat by her bed holding her hand. "I thought I was going to die," Clara said quietly. "I could feel it. The darkness coming." "I thought you would too," Hannah admitted. That is why I asked them to shoot you. I thought it would be mercy." Clara smiled weakly. "But they did not shoot me. They saved me instead." 8 hours, Hannah said. "The doctor told me. 8 hours of surgery." They sat in silence for a moment. "Hannah," Clara said finally, "we were lied to about everything." "I know. The Americans are not monsters. They are," Clara's voice caught. "They are better than we were, better than the Reich." Saying it out loud felt like treason, but it also felt like truth. When Clara was finally released and returned to camp, the other women crowded around her. They wanted to hear the story, wanted to know what happened. Clara told them about the surgery, about the surgeon who worked for 8 hours, about the nurses who treated her with kindness, about the American blood that now flowed in her veins from the transfusion. The story spread through the entire camp. It became a turning point for many of the women. If the Americans would do that for one prisoner, what else had they been wrong about? Hannah wrote to her mother about it. She tried to explain what she had learned, what she had seen. "Mutti," she wrote, "I have witnessed something here that I cannot explain. The enemy treats us with more humanity than we ever showed anyone else. I am ashamed of what we believe. I am ashamed of what we supported. But I am also grateful to be alive and to have learned this truth, however painful it is." She did not know if her mother would understand. She did not know if the letter would even reach her, but she needed to say it. The war would end eventually. In May 1945, Germany would surrender. Hannah and the other prisoners would be repatriated. They would return to a country in ruins, to families broken by loss, to cities reduced to rubble. But they would return, changed. They carried with them the knowledge that mercy is more powerful than cruelty, that kindness can destroy false certainty more completely than violence ever could. Clara lived another 50 years after that day. She married, had children, built a life in post-war Germany, but she never forgot the American surgeon who saved. Every year on the anniversary of her surgery, she lit a candle and said a prayer of thanks. "He did not have to," she would tell anyone who asked. "That is what makes it matter. He did not have to save me, but he did anyway, because in his world, my life had value even though I was." Years later, Hannah would tell her own children about the day Clara almost died, about running to the guard post and begging them to shoot her friend, about the 8-hour surgery that followed. "That was the moment," she would say, "when I understood that everything I had been taught was wrong. The Americans could have let Clara die. Why waste resources on an enemy?" They did not see her as an enemy. They saw her as a human being in need of help. And that, Hannah would tell her children, is the difference between civilization and barbarism. Not the weapons you have or the battles you win, but how you treat the helpless, how you treat your enemies. That simple plea, "Please just shoot her," became the moment when Hannah's entire world shattered and rebuilt itself. The Americans did not shoot Clara. They fought for 8 hours to save her life. They used their blood, their medicine, their expertise, not because they had to, but because they believed all lives have value. For Hannah and the other German prisoners at Camp Concordia, that surgical theatre became a classroom. The soap, the bread, the blankets, those were small daily mercies. But 8 hours of surgery for a dying enemy, that was proof of something deeper, proof that some nations, some people, operated by principles that transcended war. The greatest victories are not always won on battlefield. Sometimes they are won in hospitals, in acts of unexpected mercy, in decisions to treat enemies as human beings deserving of dignity. How we treat those in our power defines who we are. That is the legacy of those 8 hours.